The first thing we're going to see, Chewie, is Piers Morgan coming to the light side, admitting it and coming to the light side.
Get into this. Mehdi, welcome back to Uncensored. Listen, you and I have talked about this war in Gaza for ever since it started, this phase of the 75-year conflict. And I have resisted going as far as you have done in your criticism of the Israeli government. I resist no more. I think we've reached common ground about what we view is happening and has been happening through this period of this blockade, which frankly is just starvation of the people there, including so many innocent young women and children. And I think that the incessant bombing and killing, and we don't know how many civilians have been killed, but it is on a daily basis. It looks like hundreds of people every day, with no apparent attempt, it seems to me, to have any real plan for how this ends or what happens when it ends, other than if you look at what Smodrich has been saying, probably the most right-wing member of a very right-wing government, he is talking in a genocidal language about kicking all the Palestinians out. So I think you and I have reached a place in the last few weeks where we are in agreement. But
there you go. He goes on to ask a question there. That's just the setup. There's two other clips I want to play. They're not very long, but they are Mehdi Hasan at his finest. Yeah, I do have that kind of, someone said Darth Vader. It's like Darth Vader saving Luke Skywalker from, who was the name? Was it Emperor?
Palpatine.
Palpatine, is that who it was? And I don't think we should be ungracious to kind of, or to now say, well, fuck you, you took so long. But what we should do is be cautious. It's a little bit like when the government does something we support. We're going, yeah, that's a good move to make government, but we still don't trust you. Like all the other things, we still don't trust you. Piers Morgan has been historically bad on Trump and graded him on a curve. He's been pretty good on most international things, on Russia and Ukraine. But as we see with many conservative right-wingers, Israel seems to be the thing that enables them to ignore their consistency in maybe some other areas when it comes to things like free speech and that. He says he's moved across, and I think it's gone. I didn't mark it, but I think someone in the chat just said he's now on a 90-day trial, which I think is fair. Let's see what you now do in the next 90 days, Piers. What are your thoughts, Chewie?
I saw another comment. So the chat's moving so fast, so I didn't get a chance to star it. But Piers's comments there of like, I think we've finally arrived in the same place. And that was a perfect opportunity for Mehdi to say, motherfucker, I haven't moved.
Yeah, I'm still
I'm
here.
in the same place as day one. You have arrived to me.
Yeah.
But yes, it's one of those things, and we will see people, like we've seen this happen in the US with Trump supporters finding out that Trump actually isn't there for them. And we are going to have this as people realize what a bad government this is that the first human reaction is to go, I fucking told you so.
Yeah.
When it should be, welcome, you have a lot of time to make up here.
Yeah, I think that's, I actually quite like what you're saying there, Chewie, because I think that if, people, I mean, just think we've used it politically, right? Let's think about, most people watching are probably okay, and I'll say the word, with a vaccine. I know that some people don't like that word, but are okay with it. When someone who isn't comes over and goes, I was wrong, you don't go, back you go. When a flat earther, literal flat earther, finally acknowledges that the globe is a globe, you don't kick him to the curb. But because this is so serious, right? This is not believing a theory that's wrong on the flat earth. This is ignoring a genocide of people for the past, 2.5 years, 18 months, 2.5 years? For
that's
so long
that
I forgot.
For someone that's in the
aside.
media.
Yeah.
There's someone that's in the media and has the resources and the context that he has.
Yeah.
He has taken a very long time to arrive there.
Yeah.
So what is he going to do with his enormous platform now?
That's what it's about.
He's going to stand up and amplify exactly how the Zionist state has misled him for 2 years. Show us the lies.
Yeah.
Like lots of us have already seen them and identified the lies, but lots of them will still be further down the trail than from where he is now, of going, no, this is justified. the Israeli state doesn't lie to me. And you know, it's all because of October 7th and nothing happened before that. You know, what is Piers going to do to bring people to where he is now?
Yeah. Because he's got the platform. He's got the platform. He doesn't really have the voice because, you know, the new expert, the new person is not the expert, but he's got the platform, and it'll be interesting to see. He's had a lot of, you know, blood on the floor debates with this in the last couple of years, where he has typically sided with the Zionist more. I'm wondering, will we see those debates disappear? Because then he doesn't have to side with the Palestinian side, or if he's consistent, will we see those debates, and often those debates are a show, continue, and then we'll see what he's got to say. So I like what you've said, Chewie. I think congratulations, welcome to the light side. We are 40 miles into the marathon. You're on the start. Look forward to you catching up. That sort of thing. Do your best to catch up.
And again, just to really hammer this point, we're using Piers as an analogy here for the people in our lives that might catch up with us at some point, whether that's on a more local issue like what this government is doing. Maybe they don't think it's so bad. They'll catch up with you eventually. Just be there.
Now we've got two more clips. As I said, they're just first one's a couple of minutes, second one's only a minute. But Mehdi Hasan, who we worship like the deity we shouldn't. When he speaks and he gets on a roll like this, it's just fascinating to know how anyone can challenge him, because he comes with the receipts. So this is a clip with Mehdi Hasan talking about actually what all the experts are saying, the experts in genocide are saying is.
The killing is ongoing, the starvation is ongoing. And look, I do hope that a dam is bursting. You mentioned the genocide word. Shmuel Lederman, who is an Israeli researcher of genocide, spent much of 2024 saying it's not a genocide, it's not a genocide. He was interviewed by a Dutch newspaper last week. He said, I've changed my position. It is a genocide. He said, in my field, there's a consensus among genocide scholars that it's a genocide. In fact, that Dutch newspaper interviewed 7 leading scholars of genocide. Every single one said, we think what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. In fact, this week, Piers, you have an Israeli former general, Yair Golan, saying a sane country does not attack civilians, does not kill babies as a hobby, and does not expel civilian populations. That is Yair Golan, the former deputy chief of the Israeli military. And
see the tall streak of weasel's piss on the right-hand side, shaking his head. It's like, and as you would expect, I'm not showing much of him, but at no stage during any of this interview does he rebut anything Mehdi said. He comes out with his own IDF points, but he doesn't rebut anything that Mehdi says.
Because he can't.
Prominent Israeli politician. He was a hero on October the 7th, fought Hamas himself on October the 7th. This is what he said this week.
Okay, John Spencer, you've been kind of pulling a lot of faces there. You obviously don't agree. But you know, given that so many...
How? Sorry. How can you disagree that the majority of genocide scholars say something when the majority of genocide scholars say something? The only way you can disagree is actually the majority of genocide scholars don't say that, and they do. So what's the disagreement?
Many allies of Israel are now raising massive alarm bells.
So this is something else Piers is going through, and he did it in this conversation. He now talks about all the countries, like the UKs, all the countries that are now basically telling Israel too much now as well. So you could also say that maybe...
Like Winston. Winston was the tipping point.
Maybe Piers is being a little bit cowardly. He's following along with kind of other world leaders, but it seems to be a movement. And very shortly, if it's not there already, all that there's going to be is Israel and the US and no one else supporting Israel in the actions they're taking in this particular context.
What is happening? You can't be comfortable, surely, with what is going on in Gaza, are you?
Absolutely not. I think it's horrible. I think there are people suffering. I just am not misinformed on who is the cause of that suffering, that it isn't Israel, that war isn't a crime. War should be avoided at all costs.
Well, war isn't a crime.
Fucking hell.
Unless it's a war crime. War is not a crime unless it's a war crime. Wars can be criminal. And this is it. And what you're going to hear him say is going, well, I just know who's the ones to blame. Again, no rebuttal.
And Israel did that. And this war didn't start 75 years ago. This war started on October 7th when Hamas invaded Israel and tried to destroy and actually did genocidal acts. I agree that there's a lot of suffering happening in
What?
Gaza, and it's the list of people who are
Oh,
responsible.
Chewie. Well, you're not aware, Chewie. This guy's an expert in war. That's what he does. He's an expert. So he's an expert in war.
Israel's not on it in my list. Hamas is on it, and I actually have
So
solutions.
I cut that off. We should probably hear what he just says then about the where he lays the blame.
I agree that there's a lot of suffering happening in Gaza, and it's the list of people who are responsible. Israel's not on it in my list. Hamas is on it, and I actually have solutions.
So the list of responsibility does not include Israel. So nothing that
Right.
Israel's done, they have no responsibility,
Right.
none whatsoever. Just to remind you, when we've talked to people from the alternative Jewish voices, Marilyn Garson, one of the points she pointed out, which sticks with me, is that Gaza the Palestinians have no ground defense, ground to air defense. So the Israeli helicopters and fighter jets just literally come and hover, fly around, come as low as they want to, pick a target, boom. That's the quote unquote, I'm getting as close to the camera as I can, war we're talking about. That's the war we're talking about. But according to this guy, Israel, they've got no complicity. They've got no fault, Israel. Nothing to do with them.
You asked Mehdi for a solution. I have solutions based on the history of war. Number one solution is to encourage Egypt to open the gate that they control.
There's that whole history of war.
No, I'm a student of war history. Okay, so there was absolutely no need to fight the Nazis. Just people needed to open their borders so the populations of the countries that the Nazis wanted could move on to a new country. That would stop war. Wonder why
remember-
we've never done that.
But remember as well, Chewie, in the history of war, there was this thing called Nuremberg that held some people accountable for their actions. That's also a part of the history of war. When an international court finds you guilty of war crimes, that's also a part of the history of war, which could also be laid at the feet of this conflict. Certainly one side, one particular politician within this conflict.
Number one,
What's also key here is what he said there. Like Egypt should open its borders and take the Palestinians. Displacing a whole people to another country is literally a genocide. So there you go. His answer is the key to finishing this war is completing the genocide. Thank you.
So his answer is
You
they
look
are
like a
not
Q-tip.
They are not committing a genocide. And the solution to this is allowing
more
us to commit a
genocide.
genocide. Okay, we'll get to the
More
end of this.
genocide.
solution is to encourage Egypt to open the gate that they control and create a humanitarian zone. Let every woman, child, and elderly person out of Gaza, just like you and I have discussed in the past about Ukraine. 5 million women, children, elderly left Ukraine to escape Russia's evil and bombardments. That could be done today. And
Hey, Chewie, he doesn't realize that Israel's Russia in the example he's just given. Because it's Russia.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
Russia.
yes.
It's Russia bombarding Ukraine that the Ukrainians having to run from. It's Israel bombarding Gaza that he's talking about. Then Gaza can run. So he's not aware. He's basically saying we in this argument are Russia. He hasn't picked up on that in his little pointy head.
And
What a
it's criminal
dickhead.
that it hasn't happened today. Now, Mehdi uses experts, although I thought, credentialism and expert theory was a bad thing today. I've been on the ground, although I've heard that that's a bad thing as well. And what's missing here is, again, which is why I was shaking my head, is that you believe, based on statements of politicians that are not the actual government and the decision makers of the institution,
Fucking
that
hell, this
Israel is
guy's
intentionally causing this harm. That's false as well. Point the finger at Hamas, as you've said in the past, Piers, and I'm sorry we've lost you. Maybe you and I can go to Gaza because it's not true that international
actually,
media
it's
can't go
interesting.
to
I mean,
Gaza.
look, just on that, John, look.
Yeah. And then they go on talking about how journalists can't get into Gaza. I've got one more clip. The last clip's only 60 seconds. We'll just roll straight into it, because this is Mehdi Hasan at his finest. I'll just say, I've written down Mehdi mic drop facts on genocide. Let's have a listen. 60 seconds.
I mean, I don't know how I can respond. So much gaslighting from the very beginning. John has been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as an embed. I love it when John and Douglas Murray and these people say, oh, we've been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as guests of the Israeli military that's doing the killing, starving and maiming. And you've come back and done exactly what they wanted to do. You've done their propaganda for them. Journalists have not been allowed freely into Gaza. That's why every major media organization on planet Earth has said to the Israeli government, you must allow journalists in. The Palestinian...
The other point here that Mehdi could have made is that the independent journalists that are on the or were on the ground in Gaza, every single one of them has been targeted by the IDF. Drone strikes, missile strikes, air strikes, snipers, tanks, the whole works. There's no one left to tell the truth.
to do. You've done their propaganda for them. Journalists have not been allowed freely into Gaza. That's why every major media organization on planet Earth has said to the Israeli government, you must allow journalists in. The Palestinian journalists who are there have been killed in record numbers. Of course, Piers, you're right. They want to hide what they're doing. That's why they're killing the journalists there and blocking the journalists from coming in.
Yes.
This idea that 100%. He's been on the ground. Yeah, I did interview a doctor, a British plastic surgeon, Dr. Tom Patoka. And by the way, he wasn't in the European hospital because the hospital got bombed by Israel. So he was in another hospital, and he talked to me about how he has to treat patients who have maggots in their wounds. He has to treat patients without limbs. He has to treat children. I've interviewed multiple doctors on the ground in Gaza, actually in Gaza, not hanging around with Israeli military. And they've all said the same thing. American doctors, British doctors, Canadian doctors. They've all talked about how many kids they saw with sniper bullets to the head and chest. Israel does intentionally kill.
I know it's a bit graphic, Chewie, but just out of interest, what kind of gun does a sniper bullet come from?
Like a high-powered, accurate, very accurate rifle with a big scope on it.
Yeah, sniper rifle. And who in this conflict has the sniper rifles?
Oh, yes, right. I'm with you there. That would be Israel.
Yeah. Just
but these guys will post up. These guys will post up, and we know this because they're happy enough to put it on fucking social media. That's how sure they are they're going to get away with this. They will set up in a building and they will just shoot anything moving. Man, woman, child. And they have been doing this since way before October 7th.
Yeah.
And it's always an accident.
And Chewie, Mehdi does go into quite a lot of detail here, including we shouldn't believe our eyes when many of us, unfortunately, have seen footage of people coming out with a white flag getting gunned down. So on top of all the information that we hear from independent sources or from, peace organizations, what we also see with our own eyes, we also have to stop believing that as well.
With Israeli military. And they've all said the same thing. American doctors, British doctors, Canadian doctors. They've all talked about how many kids they saw with sniper bullets to the head and chest. Israel does intentionally kill civilians. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant were indicted at the International Criminal Court for precisely those charges, for willful killing of Palestinians, for murder and persecution. That's why they've been indicted. That's why every human rights group in the world says war crimes are being committed. They've killed people holding white flags. We've seen it with our own eyes. They've bombed buildings without warning with families inside, like the Al-Dos family that I often cite in October 2023. They've dropped 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps full of hundreds of people.
One thing I learned about the 2,000-pound bombs, Chewie, the US Army would not use those in Vietnam because of the damage they did to the surrounding areas and the civilians it would kill. Except now my understanding is America is supplying Israel with 2,000-pound bombs. America wouldn't use them in Vietnam. I'm happy to be corrected if another country is supplying them, but I understand that America is supplying 2,000-pound bombs to Israel to use over Gaza. So that was obviously a war crime if they'd used them in Vietnam, and they acknowledged that, but they just give them to Israel, sell them to Israel to then
2,000-pound bomb is an enormous bomb.
It said something like it kills everyone within about 200 meters and damages most people within about 600 to 800 meters. So that's why they're basically a war crime, because you can't use them unless your enemy is in the middle of 6 rugby fields. You can't basically use them without damaging everyone within I think they said 1,000 yards. So,
and that is why Gaza looks the way it does now. It looks like the fucking moon because that's what they have been dropping willy-nilly.
Yeah.
As many justified criticisms of the US military that you can deliver over how they operated in Iraq, they did at least take a passing interest in minimizing collateral damage. So that's why they didn't use those bombs. Israel has no worries about it because they don't want a single building left standing in Gaza. They just want to bulldoze it all into the sea.
Yep. Let's let Mehdi get to the end of his epic, his own metaphorical bomb drop at the moment.
In October 2023, they've dropped 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps full of hundreds of people. They have killed 7 aid workers in a clearly marked World Central Kitchen aid convoy. They've bombed World Food Programme convoys, leading to Cindy McCain, the wife of the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime, to come out and condemn Israel for attacking aid workers. John wants you to ignore Cindy McCain and British and American doctors and human rights groups and your own lying eyes watching people with white flags being gunned down. He wants you to believe him and his Israeli military minders.
There you go. And there is the end of the conversation forevermore, thanks to Mehdi Hasan. I don't think so, but if anyone else watched that, it feels like the end to me. There you go, Chewie. That's the end of my clips from Piers Morgan. As we've said, he's come to the light side. He's got a lot of catching up to do. It's almost like he's missed the first 3 terms of school. He's finally come to school in the 1st term, and now he's got all that work to catch up on to do the exams at the end of the year. Is that a good analogy? Are we okay with that?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that.
All right.
I'm
anything
just
you
trying to
want to add
find.
before we...
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
cool.
So I want to show people what a 2,000-pound bomb looks like as far as what it does. And bear in mind that Israel has been dropping these on tents as well. That's
Zoom it in
small.
as much as you can.
So there you go. You can see how deep the crater is and how big the crater is.
So
by
the
people standing around it.
crater is, I mean, those men are going to be between 5'8" and 5'10", the tallest ones probably in Gaza, not a tall people. That if they stood in the middle of that, there's probably at least 1.5 of them. So it's probably a good 10 foot deep, I would guess, if you stood in the middle, maybe more.
That'd go through most multi-story concrete buildings.
Yeah.
And Israel's been happy to drop these in tents because they think one militant is in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is what they've been doing. And as someone that, you know, pays attention to military stuff and always has, the moment you hear someone slinging 2,000-pound bombs into densely populated cities, you're just like, oh, these guys do not give a single fuck what anybody thinks.
No fucks given.